In this video, I'm going to be dealing with a more important subject. I'm not going to say that all of them are important. This one is just a bit more serious. So, in some of the other ones, you guys are used to me, relaxing with my sense of humor and just acting myself. But in this one, I need to talk to you sisters about something that's going on in the black community that's really, really important and that's really damaging our children. And as mothers, you are the first line of defense to stop it. I'm talking about child sexual abuse. And I have a survey up on the blog, on the Surviving Dating blog, that's been up there probably about 2 years. And I've been, accepting responses from people about the child sexual abuse that they suffered, and asking who did it, what types of abuse they suffered, at what age, and this kind of thing. Thousands of people have responded. It's just the most amazing thing. The thing that bothers me the most, though, are the stories that come in of how women told their parents, sometimes it's both parents, sometimes just the mother, and they didn't do anything. Or worse yet, they got rid of the child, the daughter, and kept the man. So that's what I want to talk about, the mentality of black women who blame young black girls and boys for their own victimization. Y'all will call them fast, say that they must have wanted it, that they asked for it, that they liked it. I've heard so much bullshit from the mouths of black women, it disgusts me to no fucking end. And y'all, they sit there thinking that these little kids ask for these grown ass men, because these dudes are always in their 20s and sometimes even older, victimizing 12, 13, and 14-year-old girls, and you want to call them fast? Are you fucking kidding me right now? So that's what I'm going to talk about, this mindset of black women who have this thing where they feel like they need to defend the men at all costs to keep them ashy dicked motherfuckers around, and and just basically throw the little girls and boys that had these things happen to them under the bus in favor of these niggas. So if you got sensitive feelings and this is you need to click off now, because I'm going to read your ass like there's no tomorrow. So let's talk about this. We have millions of black children that have unwanted, basically they're being sexually abused. So they're having these abusive sexual experiences with adult males. And under the law, if it constitutes abuse, if the person is 3 or 4 years older than the victim. So say you got two 8-year-olds, experimenting around, looking at each other's stuff and touching and whatever. Okay, that's not sexual abuse. If it's an 8-year-old and a 15-year-old, it's sexual abuse. If it's a 12-year-old and a 20-year-old, it's sexual abuse. If it's a 14-year-old and a 30-year-old, that's sexual abuse. So y'all need to wrap your minds around the fact that these are children until they are under the age, until they're 18. As long as they're under 18, they're kids, and they are being victimized, molested, and raped by your boyfriends, your husbands, your daddies, your cousins, your uncles, your friends, men, your daddies, and your neighbors. That's who's primarily getting at these kids, not to mention your pastors, but we'll get into that in a minute. Statistics on this are very disturbing, because a lot of black folks like to think, well, that's not really a black problem, that's white people, we don't do that kind of thing. Whoever told you that, you need to go and kick their teeth in, because they was lying to you. This shit here is so ridiculously prevalent. The problem is, though, that black people have this thing where they A, don't want to tell nobody, they want to try to keep it a secret, and B, don't get the kids help because of the stigma of getting psychological counseling and therapy for people who have suffered these kind of abuses. So the kids get victimized twice, sometimes 3 times, because they don't get believed. So they don't get any help. They get denied assistance with the molester, because y'all gonna keep the molester around because you want that ashy dick. And then the kids are basically left defenseless. And once you tell, once the abuser sees that the child has no one to protect it, it's on like Donkey Kong. And that's how you set your kids up. Now, look at this studies. Studies. I was looking at all these studies. Studies show that children under the age of 16 are molested every 2 minutes in the United States. The majority of those children are between the ages of 8 and 13. Okay, so they're babies. For every victim revealed, the FBI says that 9 are hidden. Not only from police and people who, are in law enforcement, but from the parents themselves. Thousands of children are prey to people who position themselves to be in contact with your children. And this would include youth pastors, teachers, coaches, pastors, scout leaders, family friends always hanging around, relatives, they always hanging around, and neighbors who always hanging around. You got these people always coming around, want to be around your kids, take your kids places and all this stuff. You sitting up there as a single parent thinking that shit is cute, that they care, that they want to bond with your child. What they really want to do is what's called groom your child, and they're grooming you at the same time to trust them to take your child away from your supervision and to have their way with them for hours on end. The kids are terrified to say anything. Most of the people who responded to my survey said in there in the comments, I've never told anyone this until now. And these are people in their 40s and even older. Are you feeling me? So the statistics that we're talking about, these are the best guesses of the Department of Justice and the FBI and other law enforcement agencies. What I'm going to say is, they say 1 out of 3 girls and 1 out of 6 boys. From my research, I'm going to say it's 5 out of 3 girls, because of the fact that the majority of the women are victimized multiple times by different perpetrators. It's not just a one-time thing or just a one-person thing. It's multiple perpetrators over the course of their childhood and on into their young adulthood. Okay? Now, people like to blame the mothers. They're like, you should have known. Why didn't you do something? This and that. And, because I don't want this to be across the board blaming of mothers. I'm talking about specific division of mothers, the ones who do know, who were told and failed to respond in a way that would protect their child from further victimization. I'm not talking about every single mother whose child is molested, so I want everybody to understand that, because studies show that the majority of mothers don't know. They are in a position where they're married to this man. A lot of times it's the man's own child. I mean, who is going to think that their own husband, the father of their child, is raping the little girl at night when the mother's asleep or at work or whatever, away from the house? Who's going to want to think that? Nobody. So, these guys know that, and they take advantage of that trust. So the women don't know unless they are observant. And when at the end of this video, I'm going to give you some tips to watch out for, because there are some very clear signs that will alert you that something is wrong with your child. And, kids might be afraid to tell you, but their behavior is going to tell it. And if you are an alert mother, you will understand what I'm going to tell you is a warning, and you need to take your child to the nearest medical treatment centers to have them examined, and then take your ass to the nearest police station and file charges. It is not your job to protect these ashy ass, child molesting, raping ass niggas. That's not what you're here for. But black women have this thing. I'm telling you, it's like they just want to protect. They feel like it's their job to protect black men and save them, and keep them out of jail and this and that. No, it's not. If they've done a crime, especially if a crime against an innocent child, a young woman, anybody whose trust they violated, they need to go to prison. Even if they don't go, you need to go to the fullest extent of the law that you can. Stop protecting them. When you protect them, when you don't tell it, what you're basically doing is telling them that what they did to your kid is okay. It's acceptable behavior. Your silence is your tacit approval. That's what that is. Just like when white people don't speak up when their friends start telling racist jokes. It's the same shit. Your kid came to you and told you this was happening and you don't do shit about it, then the problem is you. Okay, you and this man that you're protecting, it's not the child. Don't you dare call that child fast or say anything negative about her. You talk about that ashy dick nigger. That's what you need to do. All right, so now let's talk about this because a lot of women don't understand what behaviors constitute sexual abuse. Okay, they think, there's only if you penetrate a child's body, if the man actually penetrates. That's not really true. Under the law, sexual abuse is defined as any kind of sexually oriented touching, whether it's by force, trickery, bribery, coercion, whatever word you want to use, between two people where there's an imbalance in age, in physical size, in power, or in knowledge. So as I told you, two 8-year-olds, experimenting, looking at each other's little, in their underwear, that's not sexual abuse. But you got somebody, 4, 5, 10 years older, that is sexual abuse. And what was I getting ready to say? I'm losing my train of thought here. Oh, this is a really upsetting topic, but it's one that I think we need to talk about because this is happening a little bit too much. I mean, every time you look online, you see some stories about some adult male, in a position of trust, violating that trust and raping or molesting a child and getting these little girls, 10, 11, 12 years old, pregnant from their repeated assaults on them. So here's some statistics you might be interested in hearing because people will be like, well, it doesn't happen that much. You're exaggerating. Let me run this by you. According to the Department of Justice, people under 18 years of age account for 67% of all sexual assault victimizations. These are, numbers gleaned from nationwide reports. And if you remember, most people aren't really going to report it. So these numbers, even though they sound high, are actually probably triple that. Children under 12 years old account for 34% of those cases, and children under 6 account for 14%. So, 14%, that's going on close to 20%. That's like 1/5 of the sexual assaults in this country are on children under the age of 6. That's what that's saying. The majority of both female and male victims of rape knew the person who raped them. So you parents are sitting there teaching your children to watch out for strangers. They call it stranger danger. They used to teach that at my daughter's school. They called it stranger danger. Those aren't the people doing the majority of the raping and molesting. It's the people who have groomed you to trust them, the people that you let in to your house, the people that you trust your children around, like family and friends. These are the people who are doing the damage to your children, and you are sitting there unsuspecting and or protecting them and throwing your kid under the bus. For instance, there's this website called the Black Women's Blueprint. They've been doing a study for I don't know. They started theirs after I started mine, but whatever. It's been online for a while. They report from the results that they got that 60% of black women have been sexually assaulted by a black man before they turn the age of 18. 60%, and that's by their study. Like I'm saying, mine is completely different. And I'm saying, they say 1 out of 3. I'm saying 5 out of 3, if not 6 out of 3, because of the multiple victimizations of most women. It's not just one person doing stuff to them. It's multiple people, over the course of their childhood. So, and then I found this other study. This came from the New York Psychiatric Institute Sexual Behavior Clinic. They report, because they work with all the people in New York who have been convicted, right? They report that the average molester, when apprehended and convicted, reports having abused an average of 73 children. The typical offender within the family has committed more than 80 acts of incest with female children. Okay, that means that women are way too trusting of these dudes. Y'all have got to tighten up the reins. You have to do more to protect your girls. So, who are the pedophiles? Let's talk about that. You want to talk about the stranger danger, and you think that, the people who are molesters are going to look some kind of weird way, like they're going to have a sign on their head or something. Mm-mm. Sex offenders are, I mean, just anybody. You can't tell by looking at them. They don't have only certain types of jobs. They don't dress certain ways. They don't have certain hobbies or interests. They could be anybody. They come from every walk of life, every social economic level, every ethnicity, every religious background. Some are married, some are not. Although, by the studies I was reviewing, the majority are married, which I thought was really interesting. The majority are also very religious. The majority are also very controlling, and they believe in that female submission shit. So, when you have a man who believes in controlling people who are weaker and less powerful than him, dominating them, then it's not a stretch to see if he's going to do that to you. He wouldn't have a problem doing it to a younger female than you as well. Okay? They estimate that there are around 5 million child molesters in the U.S. 95% of them are male, 5% female. And like I said, most of them are married. What does that do? By being married, it gives them a shield. It's like what they used to call a beard for a guy who's gay, and on the down low, he'd have a woman and pretending like they had a relationship. They called her a beard. So these guys are hiding in marriages while they exercise their proclivities to have sex with children. Okay. The other thing that I saw, I'm always warning women about leaving their children with unattended and unsupervised with teenage boys. This is a major problem, and I don't even know how, I can't say this enough. You cannot trust a teenage boy around a little kid, a male or female. Their hormones are running rampant. Their hormones run their body, okay? They do not have the mental development and the brain development to really monitor their behavior that well. Insurance companies say that males don't mature, as far as their brain goes, until they're 25, 26 years old. So you got a 14, 15, 16-year-old. He's not going to be wrapped too tight. There's no reason why you should leave him in charge of little 6 and 7-year-old girls, 6 and 7-year-old boys. You don't do that. You want to I know you want to trust your kids, and you want to trust your nephew, and you want to trust your cousin and your stepson and all this old shit. Don't do it. Don't do it. Because you're putting both of them, the kids they're watching and them, at risk. They cannot be left alone with little children. That just makes no sense. Most of the child molesters start molesting as teenagers. And you also can't, trust people just because you think, well, they're religious, this and that, because most of the child molesters report being religious. They try to use scriptures or whatever religious text they follow to kind of rein in their behavior. Of course, when it fails, then they turn around and blame the devil or some demons or something like that, instead of standing up like men and taking responsibility for their choices. They don't do that. They blame it on some invisible being called the devil, Satan, some old shit like that, and you guys go along with it. That's bullshit. The only person who made the choice to do that was them. And you think, well, you should be able to trust your religious leaders. I mean, look at the scandals that have been taking place in the Catholic Church over the last 30, 40 years. Look at Eddie Long, for example. I mean, there's a video of him on YouTube. I mean, dude couldn't even do a whole sermon without talking about, the little boys. Because he's up there on the pulpit talking about, where my shorties at? Where my little shorties at? So he's thinking about screwing little boys in the ass while his ass is in the pulpit. I mean, come on now. And most of these guys, they have like a criminal history, or they exhibit some other kind of antisocial behavior, and they're typically narcissists. So what they are concerned about is their pleasure, their enjoyment of life, and they don't really care that they're causing your child psychological damage that's going to really be following them for the rest of their life. They don't think about that. They just want the kid to do what they want them to do so that they can get that nut, and that's all they care about. So I want to talk about, let's talk about the mothers who do know, because when they don't know, that's really nothing we can much do about that. And people are like, well, you should have known. Why do you think that? Are you psychic? What do you know? Because these dudes are slick. They are like, you just think about how many men hide the fact that they are cheating on their wives. How many men hide the fact that they're bisexual on the DL from their women? Do you think that any man could not, who if he really wanted to, keep the secret that he's a pedophile? Come on now, come on, 2 and 2 still equals 4 all around the world. So these guys can keep secrets, and they like to hide their perversions, and they do it very well. So the women hitting them with that, well, you should have known garbage, is not fair. But what I want to talk about is the mothers who do know. And so for one reason or another, they don't take action. They don't, they act like the child never said anything, or they tell the child to forget it, that the guy didn't mean it, he's sorry, it won't happen again. Because, they're just trying to brush everything under the rug. They just want it to the problem to go away. Or there are some women who refuse to believe the child was an unwilling victim, and instead they blame the child for being raped or molested, and they do absolutely nothing to charge the perpetrator with criminal behavior. Instead, they protect the perpetrator. And like I said, when you do that, you are basically giving that man a license to do whatever he wants to do with your kid, because now he knows you care more about him than you do that child, and it's on. Now, what do we think about girls? What happens when the girls report that they were being raped or molested? Think about the psychological damage, the violence that is being perpetrated against this young person. Like I said earlier, there's too many black women, they're real quick to call a 13 or 14-year-old girl fast if she's around older men, or if she ends up pregnant or something like that. And they don't, you guys need to stop and think, this is a baby. And this dude who's twice her age is victimizing her. Instead of you blaming her, you need to be picking up your cell phone that you blab on all the time and call 911 and report his ass. That's what you need to do. She's a kid and she's being used. Until black women stand up and intervene and protect the young girls in the black community by calling the cops on these dudes, they're going to continue to victimize children. They're going to continue to rape them. They're going to continue to sexually abuse them. They're going to continue to abduct them and sell them into sex slavery. They're going to continue doing all that stuff until we as women stand up and form a circle to protect our girls. You guys have got to change your mindset about this. You do not worry about no ashy dick niggas. They can take care of themselves. And it's like, why you think you need to protect them anyway? This the same nigga you talking about you want to lead you and, submit to it and be the head of the household and all this shit. How do you want to, he's going to have that role, but you need to run and stand in front of him and protect him? Do you understand what you're even saying? It doesn't even make no goddamn sense. On one hand, you want him to be the leader. On the other hand, you treat him like a fucking baby. I don't get that thinking. And did you think about the damage this does to the little girls? I mean, there's a direct connection, according to sociologists and psychologists and therapists and stuff, that the girls who are victimized, they're runaways. They tend to get into relationships where there's domestic, or what they call dating violence. They are alcoholics. They have drug abuse problems. They end up being promiscuous because they feel like they have no value anyway. So any man who, wants to use their body, they just, let them. There's a high risk of suicide. They do things like cut themselves. They have eating disorders. They get involved in criminal activities. And there's a lot of mental illness problems. What do they call it? Split personalities and manic depression. What they call it now? Bipolar. They don't call it manic depressive anymore. They call it bipolar. So, these are some of the problems. And let me tell you, I'm going to share some of the stories with you that have come through my website. This one girl says, and it's on survivingdating.com. I'll put the link to the survey in the, in the box there, where we talk about the, what the content of the video is. I told my mother, and she confronted my stepfather. She told me, he said it won't happen again. The pastor at our church said the same thing. They assured her that it wouldn't happen again after he talked to my father about what he'd done. Later that day, my mother sent me to the store with my father, and he threatened to kill me for telling. I knew no one was going to help me at that point. He raped me for years after that until I got old enough to move out. Okay, then here's another one. I told my mother what her boyfriend was doing to me when I was about 14. I had to tell because I couldn't stand it anymore. He'd started when I was just 12. The abuse stopped, but he let me know that I had betrayed his trust, and he wasn't happy about it. My mother was supportive of me and angry at him, but she never stopped dating him or letting him come around. Okay, here's another one. I told my mother when I was just 5 years old that my father was abusing me. My mother's initial reaction was to tell me that she would speak to him about it. She appeared to be upset, but there seemed to be no rage, more of a complacency. I was frightened that when she told my father what I said, he would be angry and hurt me. The abuse was kept a family secret. No one talked about it, which increased my feelings of isolation and shame. The sexual abuse continued through my childhood. I remained in constant anxiety, never knowing how to relate to members of my family or really anyone for that matter. I still can't trust anyone and have a normal relationship with a man. Here's another one. I was 4, and it was my mother's new boyfriend who abused me and my sister who was 6. This man pulled down our pants and we told my mother and we got our butts smacked. He then started really abusing us. I told my mother again when we were about 8 and 10. She told me not to be so stupid. And then that went on until that man died. I got married when I was 18 and told my mother again when I was 20, and she still wouldn't believe me. So what's going on with these women? There has to be a reason. When I see a problem, I always look at the source. I always wonder, okay, what is the issue? What is in these women's minds that they care more about these men than they do protecting their children? What is the motivation for their choice? And it kind of comes down to this. I used to be on the board of directors of a safe place here in Oakland, and it's a battered woman's shelter and organization. And you talk to a lot of women, and so you get a pretty good idea of their mental state when they have been abused. Or there's a lot of fear there, a lot of anxiety. But so a lot of those reasons that they gave translate to the reasons why they would accept abuse not only for themselves but for their children as well. Some examples might include they're kind of overwhelmed. They're overwhelmed by the feelings they have about the whole situation. Like, they're fearful, they're angry, they're embarrassed, and they feel ashamed. They don't know what to do because just thinking about it, it's just overwhelming. So they opt to do nothing. They're like frozen in some kind of emotional hellhole. Or they have confusion about stereotypes. A lot of people have this problem. They have in their head images about what good men look like and what bad men look like. And they can't see the person that they love, their husband, their boyfriend, their daddy, their grandfather, sexually abusing children because it conflicts with their belief that people who do that kind of thing look a certain way. You see what I mean? They can't kind of wrap their mind about it around the fact that these people that they care about are those bad guys. It really causes a lot of mental angst for them. Sometimes, and this was the case with a lot of the battered women, they're dependent, on the person of either physically, of course, emotionally, but most of the time financially, because he's the sole, he's the sole provider. So without him there, they have no money, and a lot of fear of that they wouldn't have any place to live, and that if that person were investigated and imprisoned, that also includes pastors, that they would lose a lot. There would be like this major void in their life. So they're very afraid of that. There's fear of the breakup of the family. They're fearful of everybody finding out what happened, of being taunted and ridiculed and shamed, called names, told that they were a bad mother, the embarrassment of the whole thing, the collapse of their social circle, because, people are going to be like, we can't have your kids around you and that man because blah, 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 blah. There's concern about CPS becoming involved. There's, the need for lawyers and court appearances. A lot of people just see that as an overwhelming obstacle, so they opt not to do anything because they don't want to deal with all that. And then there's self doubt. Sometimes there's people observe things and they think that something might be going on, but they talk themselves out of picking up the phone, calling the police because they're like, well, it's just me. What if I'm wrong? I'm just tripping. I'm just paranoid. I'm seeing things. Or the horrible one, it's none of my business. Heifer, yes, it is. If it's somebody and it's a child, they're defenseless, and you think something's going on, your ass has an obligation to do something about it. To pick up the phone and alert somebody who is an authority. They will investigate. If nothing is found, then nothing's found. That's fine. But at least you've done something to help protect a child. And the thing that really is really worrisome, I think that most of the women really struggle with, is that the majority, and we're talking like 90% of children who get sexually abused is by somebody that they know. It's somebody that they and their parents trust, someone that the parents have let in to the household and into the family unit so that that person has access to these children. So most commonly, these are, fathers, and I'm talking birth fathers. I'm not talking about stepfathers or foster fathers. I'm talking about, this is the man who made the kids. He rapes them, okay? The older brothers are notorious. Stepfathers, mama's boyfriends, grandfathers, and cousins. Those and uncles were the majority of them. And what really bothered me was how many people, they wouldn't report the person, but they would just like within the family say, well, don't leave, stay away from uncle so-and-so, or stay away from cousin so-and-so, and don't be alone and around, so-and-so. But they would never really move that person, ostracize that person from the family. They would just try to alert the kids, but they're little kids. What are they going to do? If this person just grabs them and picks them up, what are they supposed to do? So you put your kids at risk, to keep this man in the family unit and around all these children when he's a fucking pervert. I don't understand. He should have been ostracized. No, he should never be invited to any family gathering where there's children, ever, in the history of, until his ass is dead, should he be in that position. But so many black families don't handle it that way. They still let the person come around, and they pay more attention to his needs and his, emotional health and his satisfying his tummy by feeding him and having fun with him than they do protecting the children in the family. And I find that behavior to be atrocious. And then you got to think about this. You got these little kids, right? They grow up and they have all kind of problems because they're trying to handle all this emotional angst. So they have problems. Look at how many black women have heart disease. They're overweight. They're obese. They have diabetes, hypertension. Don't you think that and fibroid tumors? These are things that are by stress. The migraine headaches, things in the stomach, ulcers, digestive problems, colitis. They're alcoholics, they're drug addicts, or they have either anorexia or obesity from either overeating or undereating. So it's just a food problem. So these are ways that this kind of stuff manifests when the kids have psychological problems behind being sexually abused and it's not treated. And a lot of it manifests in relationships. So they get older, right? They want to have a relationship. They don't even know how. They can't relate to people in healthy ways. They tend to choose men who repeat the patterns of abuse. So then you talk about, these women don't, they don't choose right. They don't choose. How can they choose? Well, some man in their past fucked them up, and so now they don't have any tools to make a healthy choice. They don't even know how. See, so the men who abused them, because it was your friends that did this shit to them, now you want to turn around and blame them for having problems because they got sexually abused. And so now it becomes this vicious blaming cycle. You blame them for getting abused, and now you blame them for making poor relationship choices because of the abuse. That's why I say, all y'all can kiss my ass. This is just one of the most horrific examples of poor parenting poor society and poor community building that I have ever seen. Black people, we have got to do better. There is no reason in the world why we should have all these young people, boys and girls, suffering from what's like it's very similar to post-traumatic stress disorder, with the signs of this kind of stress manifesting itself in violence towards themselves, violence towards other people, low self-esteem, and poor choices in partners that repeat the cycle of violence and abuse. That's what these kids are caught on. And then with this thing in the black community where everybody's like, well, just shake it off, just get over it, just pray it away, forgiveness, God will help you. That shit don't work. It shit does not work. And it's like, get your head out of a Bible and get your kids to a shrink. That's what they need. That Bible is not going to help them. Okay, they need some professional help. Your pastor who got his degree online is not going to help. He's not qualified. He's not a mental health professional. Get your children to a therapist and let them help them so that they can have normal lives and try to put this abuse behind them. You have to do that for them. Stop putting your head in the sand, up your ass or wherever you have it, and deal with the reality of what happened to your babies. Get them some help. Now I want to tell you what some of the signs are, because a lot of parents, I don't know what to look for. You saying that, the kids aren't going to tell me. How do I know that this might be what's going on? I'm going to give you some examples. Okay, we know, a little girl who goes from being an innocent little thing to being a promiscuous flip around. That is a big sign. Where did she learn all this sexuality from? Don't you think that's kind of... last week she was playing with dolls. Now all of a sudden she want to be wearing hot pants and putting on makeup and halter tops. Where would that come from? You see, that should raise your eyebrow, and you need to have a conversation with her. Okay? If your child is sick all the time, one infection after another, especially if they have urinary tract infections or yeast infections, that's not normal for little girls. You know what I mean? That's not normal. Take your baby to the doctor and have them run a sex exam on them. Something is happening to your child that's not normal. Pay attention if your child wants to avoid contact with certain adults, one or more adults, especially if those people are males. Do not ever force your child to let someone hug them, kiss them, or to be around that person. If your child is showing resistance, I don't want to, no, crying, all this kind of stuff, pulling away, that is a sign. Don't ever force that. Instead, pull your child to the side in another room, out in the car, take a walk or something, and talk to them and figure out what the fuck is going on. Okay, stop being stupid. You going over there and kiss Uncle Ro. Stop acting like that. You forcing your child into the arms of the person who's abusing them. Did you ever think of that? What the fuck? Okay. Little kids show signs, because what they'll start doing is acting out sexually. Suddenly, they want to hump people and, they digging down their underwear and feeling on themselves or feeling on other children. That's a sign. Where did they learn that? Who taught them that? That's not normal. Some of the other behaviors are, say for like elementary school up to middle school age, they'll show changes in personality. They'll show changes in their behavior. They may have been very friendly and outgoing child. Suddenly they're very withdrawn. They're fearful. Younger children might suddenly develop a fear of the dark. They might be fearful of going to the toilet, or you might find blood, or they're having pain when it's time for them to do a poop or urinate. Take them immediately to the doctor. Don't be giving them laxatives and all that stuff. Pick them up, take them to the doctor right then. There's something wrong. There's changes in self-esteem, for middle school and high school age children. They, the boys might suddenly become interested in porn or something. Some of that is normal. They're going to be curious. But if that's all they want to do, there's a problem. Something happened. Maybe you had a student who was a straight A student and loved school, couldn't get up, I mean, just loved it, couldn't wait to go to school. Suddenly they don't want to go to school, they can't get out of bed in the morning, they resist leaving the house, which means they resist leaving you because they feel like you're the only one that can save them. That is a warning, okay? That's a red flag. Grooming habits that fall off is another one. Your child was, primping and propping and all, and suddenly they look like pig pen. Clothes is dirty. They start overeating, get acne and all stuff. Sometimes that for girls is a way for them to try to make themselves unattractive, so they feel like that will make the abuser leave them alone because they're not cute anymore. You see what I mean? So there's a lot more that I could talk about. I think the main thing is for you as parents to make sure that you teach your children at a very young age what the good touches are, the bad touches are. And one of the things that I used for my daughter was, she had like a little swimsuit. And I told her any place that was covered by her swimsuit, nobody was to touch her there except mommy or the doctor. I didn't even put daddy in it. I mean, he was cool with it. He knew what I was trying to do, so but she was past the age where, he changed her diapers and stuff anyway. But, I said, nobody's to touch you there but mommy or the doctor. And if the doctor does it, mommy's going to be right there. So nobody's going to touch you there but mommy. And if somebody does, I want you to tell mommy, and I don't care what they say about hurting mommy. Mommy is invincible. Mommy cannot be hurt. So you tell me everything. Okay, mommy. Okay? And that we had that talk over and over and over and over until it sunk in her head. So don't ever think that your child is too young to know that they should have respect for their body, and that nobody has a right to touch them in any way that they don't like. Children rarely, if ever, lie about this kind of stuff. The main thing you need to do is make sure that you let your kid know that if they tell you something, that you're going to believe them, and that it's not their fault, and that you're going to take care of it and you're going to protect them. They need to know that, and they need to hear it from you. Okay, I know that, this is hard. I know that there's a lot of risks and dangers out there, and I know that especially if you're a single parent, you can't be there 24/7. But you have to do better. You have to do the best job you can to protect your kids. Stay vigilant about anybody who shows too much interest in trying to be alone with your children, especially your little girls. Keep them the fuck away from your daughters. Okay? Do not. You got some nigga who want to spend the night over at your house, tell his ass no. You get a babysitter and you go to his house. You're going to be fucking and screaming and doing whatever the fuck you do. You don't bring niggas into your house where they have access to your girls while you're asleep. What the hell are you thinking? You don't do that unless you got teenagers and they can lock the door or something. But I mean, for little kids, no, you don't do that. Don't put your kids at risk, especially behind some ashy ass dick. Oh my God. So I guess this has gone on long enough. I just want you guys to understand, the mentality that's been put into your head that you have to compete with other women for male attention, and that you have to do everything that you can to get and keep a man, to the point where you sacrifice your children to do it. That is a mental mind game, and it sets you up and your kids to be victimized by these rogue, predatory males. You have got to strengthen your mind and stay vigilant. Stay forever vigilant, and understand that the most important person in your life has got to be your children at all times. They didn't ask to be here. You brought them here. So it's your responsibility to make sure that you protect them until they're old enough to protect themselves. That's your fucking job. Okay? I don't care what else you do. That's your main top priority, to get them to adulthood safely as possible. All right? We've got some more good stuff coming up. This was a tough one, and you notice this is the longest of the videos because I had a lot to say on this subject. There was a lot of information to share. I'm going to post some links to some sites that can help you if you're faced with this kind of dilemma. You can go on there. Some of them even have live chat. There's hotline numbers you can call if you suspect child abuse and you need some help, you don't know what to do. They will give you information for your area all over the country. They have access to information on every city, every local municipality in the country, and they can help you get your child examined and start the paperwork to prosecute whoever hurt your baby. All right. My name is Deborah Cooper. Survivingdating.com is the website that you can go on to get more information about dating relationships in Black culture. I will be back tomorrow with another exciting video on another great topic. This is the series What Black Men Say, Manipulative Things Black Men Say to Make Black Women Jump Through Hoops, video number 14 of the series. And we're aiming to get about 20. So we'll be back tomorrow with more. Bye bye.